Hello my friends, thank you so much for joining me again in the kitchen at Thuya Hill. I'm super glad to have you here. Thanksgiving is just around the corner and many of us have got our sights set on what we're going to cook to feed our families. A big item on Thanksgiving for many families is the dessert. For us, Thanksgiving would not be complete without a good old-fashioned pumpkin pie. So that is what we're going to make today. I was recently gifted several beautiful pie pumpkins from a very good friend of mine, and I'm going to be using one of these to make a pie today. I wanted to walk you through step by step the way I make a pie using a pie pumpkin, and I hope that this video gives you some inspiration for your upcoming Thanksgiving celebration. So let's get started today and make our homemade pumpkin pie. So I have these beautiful pie pumpkins here from my friend, as I mentioned, and what I'm gonna do first is just give them a little rinse. They're not super dirty, but they could use a nice rinse before we cut them. All right, so the way you cook a pumpkin is similar to the way you would cook a butternut or an acorn squash. You're basically just gonna cut it down the middle and lay it flat on a cookie sheet or in a Pyrex dish, and you're gonna cook it until it's soft and tender on the inside. It's really easy. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna make a little poke in my pumpkin first so it's easier to cut. And then I'm just gonna get started cutting it right down the middle. So as you can see, I've cut my pumpkin down the middle, and I will take out the insides and save the seeds for roasting later. Those are so good. So now I'm just gonna scoop out my seeds and the insides. All right, there's one side completed. All right, we've got our pumpkin cut and de-seeded, and now we are gonna put this on a baking sheet and we're gonna cook it for about 45 minutes at 350. You will know when your pumpkin is done when the outside is squishy and you can poke it in with a fork, and the inside is soft and tender and you can scrape it out with a spoon. I'm gonna lay my pumpkins facing down like this as they bake. All right, into the oven this goes at 350 degrees for the next 45 minutes. While we wait for our pumpkin to bake is a great time to get started on our pie crust for our homemade pumpkin pie. So if you've been around this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I absolutely love Thomas Keller's all butter pie crust recipe. To me, it makes the most ideal crust that I have tasted anywhere, and I've been relying upon it for many, many years. It's consistent, it offers a very flaky, buttery taste, and the ingredients are super simple. If you want, you can double or even triple this recipe depending on how many pies you're making for Thanksgiving. But today we're only making one. So I'm using a half a cup of cold butter, and then I'm gonna use 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And then I'm gonna add a half of a teaspoon of a good sea salt, and about 1/8 of a cup of cold water. And now I'm going to mix this together with my hands until it forms a nice ball of dough. This crust can be made well in advance of Thanksgiving. In fact, you can freeze it and pull it out when you're ready to use it. What I generally like to do is make it in advance, and I'll form it into my pie dish and freeze it. And whether I'm going to be making a pie that day or within the next week, it's ready to go, which is super great. You will definitely want it nice and cold before you stick it in the oven. That way it will hold up well. All right, my dough ball is coming together now. I am going to put a little bit of flour on my counter so that it doesn't stick. And because the butter and the water were both cold, I am going to just go ahead and roll it out right now and form it into my pie dish. Okay, so now that our pie crust is rolled out, we are going to put it into our pie dish and then freeze it until we've gotten our pumpkin mixture all ready to put in the middle. Okay, so I have let my pumpkin cook a little bit longer because it needed it, and now I'm going to pull it out of the oven and allow it to cool completely, and then we will get on making our pumpkin pie filling. here is our pumpkin after about an hour of cooking in a 350-degree oven. As you can see, if I poke it with a fork, the skin is nice and soft and it dents in. And as you can see, when I flip over the pumpkin, I can easily scoop out nice big pieces of the inside of the pumpkin. And that means that it is ready to make into a nice pumpkin puree. I'm going to flip both pieces of pumpkin upright so they can cool faster, because of course we want our insides to be completely cool before we mix them into our pumpkin pie filling. All right, I have let my pumpkin cool completely, and so now we're gonna scrape it out and put it into a bowl and prepare our pumpkin pie filling. It's very similar to a squash. You don't really have to put it through a blender unless you want to make this filling. The choice is completely yours. I am not going to. I'll just mash it on my own. Okay, I have got my pumpkin all mashed up and ready to go into our pumpkin pie filling, as you can see here. And now we're gonna get on adding the rest of our ingredients. So we're gonna add 3 eggs. We're gonna add 1 cup of milk. We're gonna add 1 cup of sugar. Now I am using sucanat. You can use brown sugar or just regular cane sugar for this. I love to use sucanat in my baking. Now we're gonna add a half of a teaspoon of sea salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon each of cloves, nutmeg, and ginger. And now we're gonna mix together until it's all incorporated. Now my pumpkin pie will be a little bit more lumpy because I chose not to blend together my pumpkin puree. I'm okay with a lumpier pie. It does not bother me. If you want a perfectly smooth pie like you would get from canned pumpkin, then you're gonna wanna go ahead and puree your pumpkin in a blender or food processor. Okay, now that my mixture is all blended together, you can see here, I'm going to add it to my chilled pie crust. Okay, here is my pie crust that's been in the freezer for the last hour and a half or so. And now I'm gonna add my pumpkin pie filling to the chilled pie crust. We're gonna bake our pie in a hot oven that has been preheating to 450 degrees. We're gonna bake it for 10 minutes at that temperature. After that, we're gonna reduce our temperature to around 350, 325 and cook it for an additional half an hour to 40 minutes. Once it's done, it will sit and cool and set, at which point it will be ready to eat and enjoy. So there it is, friends, our homemade celebratory Thanksgiving pie made from a beautiful pie pumpkin. It smells so good. It's got all those delicious spices wafting up into the air. I can't wait to enjoy a piece of this with some fluffy homemade whipped cream and a nice cup of coffee. To me, that sounds like a great combination. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope that this recipe will help you as you work on your Thanksgiving dessert menu. I wish you all the best and a very happy Thanksgiving from my family to yours. And as usual, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Goodbye for now.